Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint.
They're pulling them out.
10-1-1, advisory for campus.
God!
Another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And we are surprise live again. Like I said, if you follow us, we go live for some of our episodes, and here we are with everyone's favorite background investigator, Ken. What's LA Background 13? What is happening, Ken?
It's a great life. It's been a wild ride these last few weeks.
Yeah, especially it's gotten pretty. Oh, it's been rough. I mean, we just had one up here. I don't know if you saw it on. It wasn't national news or anything, but it was pretty heavy up here. It was a 36-year-old copper clears a call and then strokes out in his car. They did it.
Sad.
He didn't clear the call, and so they did a roll call. He didn't answer. They went to his last known location, and a fella who's been on the show before, friend of myself and friend of Chuck's.
Wow.
And friend of John's was the first one on scene, had to start CPR.
Yeah, that's fucking rough, dude.
It's been like that for a lot of places.
Have you gotten your cardiologist appointment yet, Tom?
What cardiologist appointment?
You need to go to a cardiologist. You need to have a cardiologist. You need to set an appointment.
Yeah,
you
no,
need
I
to be
have
checking your shit.
to start with my GP. That's where I start. So,
Man, Tom, I'm filling your room there, man. It's like I feel like yeah, so cool. I want to get a bottle of cheap wine, like $1.50 wine, and just kind of cruise with some 70s music, you know.
You know, it's funny. It's actually over. So if you see right over my shoulder right here, this right here says LAPD. If you're watching on the show, that is the recruiting poster my dad drew when he won the LAPD recruiting poster design contest as a 17-year-old student worker.
Wow.
So,
student work is going way back.
Yeah. So my dad was in the police explorer. It's actually before student worker, he was an explorer. And his explorer advisor said, "Hey, there's you draw, Rob," because my dad drew the comic strip for Taft High School, right? For those of you San Fernando Valley rats, you know where Taft High School is. Drew the comic strip. He's a police explorer. So his explorer advisor says, "Hey, you should draw for this contest." I've told the story in the podcast before, but my dad turned it in, won, right? So his drawing was hanging up in all the stations and all the places for LAPD recruiting. And he had a copy of it, and he had the framed copy. And that was my whole life. That's what I saw, was this copy of it. Well, my dad retires, takes his retirement job up in San Luis Obispo, California. His old Explorer Post advisor had moved up there when he retired. They ran into each other randomly, and he says, "I got something in my garage for you." And he pulls out the original artwork that he still had.
Oh my gosh. From
the day my dad turned it in 1967. Wow. And he gives it back to my dad. My dad retired in 30 years later. He gives it back to him and says, "Yeah, I've had this. It's yours." And so my dad gave it to me because at that point I was on the job. And so he gave it to me, and I've hung in my house ever since. So for people that see that, that's why little bit of history.
When was your dad on the job?
So Explorer till 71, and then 71, I think he went through and came out in 72. So like it was, I think, January, February of 72 that he came out of the academy. And then he retired. He did 25. So 97. He did the last 10 at the Emergency Operations Center, but prior to that had been at Hollywood and 77th and Foothill and everywhere. But this isn't the My Dad show. This is just
that's good.
That was back when there was only like how many divisions were there?
Well, I'll tell you this. My dad graduated the academy in the exact same uniform and kit as one Adam 12. So a gun in the low ride swivel Widowmaker, one pair of handcuffs, a stick, 2 dump loaders, a Bruce Brown, and a call
Did he get
box.
hired on when Van Nuys was basically the division for the Valley, like all of it?
He came on, and I think
Did he get to watch Foothill be born?
I think yeah, pretty much.
Wow,
Yeah,
dude, that's crazy. That's fucking wild. That's back when they were still like orange trees and farms in LA.
Yeah. He saw Star Wars on duty at the Chinese theater. He just walked into the back of the theater and stood there in the back of the theater watching the whole movie on duty because he was on a foot beat in Hollywood and there was no radio to bother anybody in the theater.
That's great.
He just disappeared. He didn't get a Rover. He didn't get a handheld radio until probably 84.
And that was the Astro?
I don't know. It was they called it the Rover.
Rover.
Remote out of vehicle emergency radio.
Did the Astro come later? Because they still,
I don't know.
They still call it a Rover.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's tradition to call it a Rover.
Yeah, the Rovers came out. They were out in 80, but they didn't roll them out to everybody. And it was slow, so they had to by division, and some had them and some didn't.
Yeah, and
what was the Astro?
My dad was already in. I think he was in IAD when they started putting radios. Or he was at Metro, right? And then he was internal affairs after Metro. Or he made sergeant, went out to West Valley, and then went to IAD. So by the time they were putting handhelds on everybody, he was probably in the kit room at West Valley handing out stuff. That's when I was a kid and I was handing out radios and shotguns to the guys from the kit room. I was like 4 or 5 years old and they're at the station. I'm literally handing out guns and radios to people. And my dad's just like, good job, son. Different times.
Oh man, they would lose their that agency would lose their shit now if they had a kid in there handing out gear.
Oh my God. It was so good.
You'd be like, what the fuck?
Best. Like shit. There's so many other things that you couldn't do now that he did back then.
Yeah.
That was when Metro was on the beat and release program.
Beat and release.
Anyway, well, here we are. We've got some crazy. It's been a crazy week down in Southern California, which is Ken. For the people who don't remember or haven't been here in a while, why don't you tell everybody where you're from and how they can find you?
Well, I was on LAPD from 80 to 2003, and then I was in backgrounds part of that time, and then after I retired in 2006 to 2018, I was at LAPD backgrounds. I retired up to beautiful Washington State in 2018 after 35 years with the city, and now I do police applicant consultations for people who want to get on the job at policebackground.net.
And let me tell you, I know a lot of people that swear by Ken's services, and if I knew half of the stuff that Ken has forgotten about being a background investigator, I could get a job anywhere as a background investigator.
You could.
Anyway, that's. I mean, you may not have written the book, but you certainly did the first appendix.
Still working it. So we have also the podcast, the Police Applicant Podcast. If you Google it, you can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and stuff. So we're all over the place.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So it's been you've been posting some stuff. We just start with the biggest story from down south is the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had 4 suicides in one day of department employees. 4 suicides.
That's big.
I mean, I know they weren't all active. I think there was one retired. But I'm going to tell you right now, a retired suicide can still hit, because then you start wondering, was I there enough for him? Shoot, I'll take Ken back. You've seen the new Centurions. Yeah. I mean, if you want to see a snapshot of a time period of police work that includes some truths that still survive to this day, watch a movie where a cop is an active duty police officer and then retires, and the cops that he was so tight with only the week before forget all about him completely and leave him by the wayside. And he's got no wife, he's got no kids, he's got no nothing. And by the end of the movie, spoiler alert, he eats his gun because there are so many cops that make their entire life about the job that they have nothing else at the end. And I'm sure, Ken, you've been on even longer than I have. You can probably speak to that, having seen it more times than I have.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of police life. If you're going to be a police officer, you need to know up front that you're going to have a lot of people that commit suicide, and it's not something that should be hidden from people, but nobody ever really talks about it. But yeah, if you're going to be a cop, you're going to know people, or you're going to have friends that have committed suicide.
Right.
Yeah.
And
good portion.
You're going to know people that die through felonious means and by tragic means, and then by their own hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've got friends that have been shot and killed. I've got friends that have been in car crashes and killed. I've got friends that have been in car crashes and will never survive. And then I've got friends that have killed themselves on purpose and on accident.
Right. Yeah. Shit, I was working when we lost a cop. The day that happened.
In your division?
That was no. Different adjoining area, our agency, but adjoining. And we immediately had to drop what we were doing and go help and take over. And the next day we took over their whole area because everyone was all fucked up. And there's people we worked with that they knew this gentleman. And the sad thing is that the boot he had in his car survived. And then a few years later, I think it was 5 or 6 years later, she died from those injuries.
Oh, wow.
It's very sad. And then so when you get in law enforcement, you're like, oh, it's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to know. And then it happens. And then a lot happens. And then you just see so many people, especially if you work at a large agency. If you work at a smaller one, it's going to be a lot less. But if you work at a big agency, it's going to happen way more than what you want. And you're going to be touched by it eventually. And probably more than once. It's very rough. It's very mentally taxing.
Yeah.
Well, like they say, there's two kinds of motorcycle riders in this world, right? Those that have gone down and those that will go down, right? Well,
yeah.
There's two kinds of cops in this world. Those that have seen friends die and those that will see friends die. Right.
Yeah.
And
correct.
The timeline for anything is ultimately going to be zero because it's going to get to that point where it happens, right? It's just you're either before it or after it.
Yeah.
And how many times will it happen, right? I thought I was done worrying about my friends, and everybody who's listened to this show knows, like, I was one of my trainees, and I never thought to imagine, like, 10 years post-retirement, one of my trainees would buy the farm and it would hit me so hard,
Right.
I had a trainee at Backgrounds, and we worked together. I trained him to do backgrounds, and so I spent a month with him. And then when he was at the unit, and then a few years later, after I had retired, he came up in the blue line as he had died. And I said, "Oh, let me call up and find out, man," because he was young. And so I called up the watch commander, and I go, "Hey, I trained this guy at Backgrounds. Can you tell me what happened?" And she goes, "He took his own life." And I was in shock to find out that information. But it's just one of those things where you go, you work with these people and everything seems fine, and then the next you hear about them, they committed suicide, and it's not an easy thing. And I was going to say that also that, with cops, you hear, you see a bunch of crap you shouldn't see. Cops
Nobody
see things. Yeah. Nobody should see it, but you see stuff that you see stuff that's multiplied compared to what everybody else would see that you should not. And when it comes to suicides, you're going to be walking down the hall and someone goes, "Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Yeah, they killed themselves." And you're like, and it hits you really hard. It's like someone just dropped a boulder on your chest. And then with cops, what they do is they'll turn around and they go, wow. And then you go eat lunch.
Right.
Yeah. They just brush that shit under the rug, or they shove it down deep inside, and then they find other things to, accompany their brain or whatever, and just occupy their brain. And then next thing you know, down the road, something happens where you're off of work. Maybe you're taking days on the beach, or you're injured, you're laid up, or you're retired. And then now the quiet time sets in, and all those friends that you had, because face it, when you become a law enforcement officer, a police officer, you will have a lot of friends when you work. But then when you retire or you're injured or something like that, a lot of those friends, or even on days off, a lot of those friends, you don't hang out with those people off duty because they're in different parts of the county, the city, because a lot of cops don't work where they live. So they're spread out.
You work at the same division, but you
out.
live on different sides of the county.
Right. And the only time you were talking to those people is when you're at work, because you see them so frequently. And when you're off, like, you just want to spend time with your family. So you really don't have those connections outside of work. And then next thing you know, you're laid up or you're whatever, and it's quiet and you don't have anyone to really talk to you. And next thing you know, all those thoughts start flooding back in because you didn't deal with them when they happened. And everyone's guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I know Tom is. I know Ken is 100%, because we're human and we're not machines. We're not invincible. And these are just emotions that we suppress. And every cop does it because there's too much bad shit that we see. We don't want to remember. So we suppress it. And then but it comes out eventually. And it happens at the worst time. And I was actually speaking with a doctor, and she goes, yeah, cops, they most of them have PTSD. And I was kind of describing some things that were going on. And she's like, that's fucking PTSD, dude. I was like, no shit. So yeah, I was like, oh fuck, dude. Like, I had no idea. Like, whatever. Okay, that's weird.
So you're going to, and that's the thing. What we've talked about this on the show so many times. The worst day of someone else's life is our Thursday, right? And we don't, we internalize so much, right? That sometimes it's funny. My wife will show me stuff, right? And most of the time it's whatever, like either it's stupid and I don't care, or if it's silly and it's funny or whatever. But she watches police videos like I do, and she monitors social media probably more than I do because she likes that stuff and she didn't see it all the time. So she'll show me stuff, and occasionally I'm like, why would you? I don't need to see that. Stop. We don't. What? And I realize my tolerance has gone down for that in my age, because I got plenty of it, and now that I've had a break from it, if I see it again, I'm like, no, don't drag me back there. Like, I don't. No.
That's, dude. That brought up something that reminded me in roll call after my shooting. I had just gotten back, and another shooting had happened, and they're like, let's watch it in roll call and debrief it and what fucking went wrong. And I was like, I'm gonna step the fuck out. I'm good, guys. I don't need to debrief this. I just fucking went through it. I'm good. Let me know when it's done. I'm gonna be down getting gear, or I'm gonna be down in the watch commander's office because I'm stuck inside for a little bit. So yeah. Makes me feel bad about the video I just sent you too.
The video you just sent me?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was like, did you see this?
Yeah.
You took a 12 gauge to the face.
There are times when people send me stuff and I go, yeah, cool. And I thumbs up and I don't watch it because I kind of know where it's going. I don't know. Ken, have you found yourself to be more avoidant, or because some people dive in, some people, they miss it. So, and they keep going down the hole, and it's like that they miss the poison, right? And then other people are like, whatever about it. And it doesn't come into play. You are embroiled in it for a living to a certain degree, like we are. So where do you find yourself falling on having to follow this stuff and be aware of it?
I mean, it doesn't bother me when I guess I'm a little warped in that sense, but if someone sends me a video, are you talking about that one with the truck, Chuck? The shotgun in the truck.
In the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was for me. That was like good shooting.
Yeah.
Good shooting, man. That was wicked good.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me, but I have to measure myself when it comes to things like riots and stuff like that, where I can't really immerse myself in rioting and things because it brings back the PTSD things. But I can watch like police shootings all day long.
Yeah. And so it's funny is my wife will show me shootings and most of it's like I'm indifferent. And to me, that indifference is my level of like, that's a brokenness too, right? Is that I can be so indifferent to a human being losing his life. But at the same time, I know what that human being was. That was a viper. That was a scorpion. That was a goblin. Right. And it is what it is. Like I have gotten so desensitized to that. It doesn't bother me like you. However, I find myself with people doing dumb shit that like accidentally kills them. That's where I'm like, stupid people like, or somebody getting run over in an accident or, plastered all over the side of the road. I'm good. Right. Like if it's a really, like, if you're telling me, hey, this is what happened when this whole neighborhood got together and took out this pedophile, they ran him over with a steamroller, that I'm fine with. But if it's like, oh my gosh, did you see what happened to these poor teens who were driving this car? And no, I don't, I'm good.
Yeah.
I think I've had my fill of those ones.
Or the active shooter that goes into the supermarket and just smokes a bunch of innocent people buying groceries.
Right.
That one got me. I was like, I can't. I fucking can't. I was like, that's
I wouldn't watch it if it weren't for this type of podcast. Ken, is the bad police work.
Mm-hmm.
I only watch it because of having to talk about it. But I really don't like watching bad police work.
No. And there's some videos out there that I get sent and I'm like, wow.
Right.
And coming from LAPD, even going back in the day, but certainly at Chuck's time too, where the tactics and things like that. And sometimes when I see these videos, I'm like, wow, what did that hurt to watch?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There are some where we've talked about them on this show sometimes where I'm like, either you're an idiot or you're a coward. Right. And it's so the one we just watched with the guy just yelling, he just poured gasoline on me. And I'm like, and as he's running away from you, first of all, you just told him in the store, hey, just wait here while I go put out the fire, you idiot. Right. Those kinds of things, that level of bad police work makes me angry because then I start to associate it with getting me hurt or killed. Right. And I've worked with enough of those jack wagon coppers that I've got 4 at gunpoint. Copy, so-and-so's en route to back. No, I'm code 4. I am code 4. You just said you had 4 at gunpoint. Yes, but if that's who you're sending me, I am fine. I do not need his help.
Send me someone else.
Yeah.
Is so-and-so working? Because I need them.
Well, that's when you're good partners. And this is boys and girls, be a good partner. That's when your good partner picks up the radio and goes, I'm closer. I'll take the handle on the back. And then the other guy goes, how do you know where I'm coming? Trust me, I'm closer. I'm right here. And he's like halfway across town, but he's rolling code to back you up.
Because code 6.
Dr. Pepper. Oh.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever see the one where the copper jumps on the hood of the car and the car starts rolling and he's got his gun out?
I've seen it a few times.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know, maybe I'm a dinosaur, maybe I'm a boomer and I wouldn't do that, but okay.
Just jump out of the way. Why would you hop on the car? Now you're leading yourself into bad tactics into a shooting.
Yeah.
And now when you get into that shooting, you're fucked. And it's gonna be out of policy. The shooting will be good. Everything else is gonna be out of policy.
We've lost a bit of perspective on what, like, I've heard some pursuit policies that other people have said are kind of, pussified. And yet when I hear it, I'm like, no, I get it. Right. Like that makes sense to me. Right. Like, there's sometimes where it's not worth your own life, let alone the innocent, like, no, and I get it. But when it comes to just bad tactics or being a freaking dumbass, if you're TJ Hooker, if you're, no, it makes me angry. It
You know
just
what
makes.
I would say to that is that police work isn't fun anymore. It used to be fun.
Oh my gosh, it did used to be fun. I kind of explained old school police work to some people that didn't understand what old school policing was like. And in some ways, they were like, "Oh, can we go back to that?" I was explaining like in the days when a husband couldn't be arrested for domestic violence unless his wife filed a private person's arrest and pressed charges, right? It was a misdemeanor not committed in the officer's presence. They couldn't arrest unless the wife wanted them arrested. That was the old school way of doing things, right? So the cops had their own old school way of doing things. They would take the husband outside and tune him up real good and tell him, if you touch your wife again, we're going to come back and do it to you twice as hard until you get the message. And these women are all like, really? They would do that? I'm like, yeah, because they couldn't arrest the husband, but they knew the right thing to do was to get him to stop hitting the wife. So they said, you want to fight, you call us and we'll come out and oblige you every single time.
Right.
And she's like, that's so much better. And it was like, duh. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
But so Ken, one of the things you've dealt with and one of the things you've talked about, you shared on your social media kind of a duh moment. We've been talking a little bit here about what it takes to be a cop and what you have to put up with, right? As the wife of a cop or as a cop, what you see or what you bring home. As you said, that's what you signed up for. You signed up for a job where we're going to see this crap and call it Thursday, right? So to that end, you posted something, and I was kind of interested in how this even came about. This was a local news station, and far be it for a local news station to publish anything factual about a local police department.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that alone caught my attention in your post, was that you were saying that somehow a local news station got it right. So what did you end up finding that we can share with our listeners? Because this was kind of surprising.
Are you talking about the Fox 11 one from yesterday?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Gina Silva, who works at Fox 11, she did a news story after the four sheriff's employees had killed themselves, and she did a really extensive story on it about what are the causes, what happens when a police officer feels like committing suicide, and taking us down that road. And they interviewed a mom who started a foundation when her deputy son wanted to commit suicide, and one of the things he didn't, but one of the things that they came up with was all the list that you're showing, and how how the department abandons cops, how cops are afraid to go to talk to anybody because they're afraid they're going to lose their life. They're going to lose their jobs and all these types of things. But this list was on there that they put, and I thought, this is something that nobody ever talks about. But look at this list here, man. There's so much pressure on cops.
So I'll read it out. I'll read them line by line, and you can tell me, tell me your thoughts, because you're right. It is, as I looked at your post, it is a shockingly accurate list, right? So for those of you not watching this live, the first one is trauma of the job. Well, I mean, duh, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Ken just spent like 10 minutes waxing poetic about all the terrible stuff we see. So yeah, but how many people actually talk about it?
They don't.
No.
They don't talk about it. And even back in my day, it was unusual to hear anything about PTSD or the stuff that you saw or what you were feeling. And I'm finding out today they have mental health stuff, but cops still aren't talking about it. And after 2020, after the George Floyd thing and all that happened, then they decided they were going to say, this thing with cops killing themselves, it's an epidemic. I'm like, cops have been killing themselves for decades, man. But all of a sudden it ramped up after 2020. Coincidence?
Yeah, right.
Not at all. Lack
Which
of
brings
support.
us to number 2, lack of public support.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't think that cops can feel the lack of public support and take it personally, you're fooling yourself. It means a lot. You know, the older I get, the more I understand Jack Nicholson's speech in A Few Good Men. You know, I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way.
Right.
Family or financial troubles. Well, that'll get anybody, but it's especially so for cops a lot of times because divorce, right? It's hard on your marriage, being a cop and cop's wife. So now you get divorced, you get a new wife, you get another set of kids, right? Now you got a wife, an ex-wife, 4 sets of kids, right? You're raising a litter at this point. But that's, for there's veterans out there that know this, right? Like you get your first marriage when you were in the military and then that didn't work out. And then you got out of the military and you were in recovery and you met a good woman and you got married and, she's great as a veteran's wife. You were shit as an active duty husband, or she was shit as an active duty wife. Those kind of family breakups can create financial trouble. Not to mention the fact that cops are notoriously terrible with money. I can point to countless boats and motorhomes that will, attest to that fact. I like this one. Injuries on the job.
Yeah.
How many times have you said, I don't want to be the potato chip, right? I don't want to be the weak sister. I don't want to be the one they're saying is farting and falling down, right? I'm good, coach.
Yep. And you tough it out for a really long time. You'll get injured, you'll work on that injury, and you'll just say fuck it. And then when the pain's enough, you're like, okay, maybe I should go out for a little bit. And then, and then you get ostracized for doing so.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go out.
Right.
Which is
there's like
dumb because everybody that's out there doing police work is going to get injured. There are, if you go to the California industrial page or whatever, I forget what they call it, but the labor page where it talks about presumptive injuries for cops, cancer, heart, digestive tract problems, back injuries are assumed after wearing a gun belt for 5 years. That is IOD.
Yeah.
All you have to do is put a gun belt on, sit at a desk your whole career, and you have an IOD back. It's going to happen. You're going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. It's a question of how hurt and how soon. Right.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine and I have one of the same injury. One of our injuries is the same. And another person I know as a cop has the same, right? Different stages of our career, different levels of experience, different mechanisms that caused it, but it's the exact same spot, exact same injury.
Yep.
So
backs are fucking rough too, man.
Well,
like once
every
your back
has
goes,
an expiration date.
Yeah, and then once it like starts to go and you're like, okay, but once it really fucking goes, it becomes painful every fucking day. And I can attest to that. I mean, you'll have days where you feel, oh, I'm okay. I think I can do this. And the next day you're like, what the fuck? And it just sets you back and it like kicks you right in the nuts. It's tough. And again, when cops get injured, they don't want to be injured. They want to keep doing the job. They join because they love the job. The only thing that they don't like is their command most of the time, or the city they work for, or the lack of support, back to lack of support. But I see this far too often on the city side where it's they don't want to even treat you. They would rather like not treat you and say, oh, that's not service connected. That's not service connected. And they just keep shoving it off until finally you're like, oh, okay, it is. And then you get the treatment. But now by this time you're a year into it or 6 months into it, and you're struggling to just get treatment when they could have just said, okay, you're injured, let's fix you. Invest the money. They've already invested and fix you, and you're back on the job. And when you go out, they shouldn't be ostracizing you and being like, oh, he's a broke dick, he's a piece of shit, yada, yada. And I shit you not. That is the mentality of 90% of the police departments in this country. They will treat their officers that way. and it's not cool. And I've seen the opposite side with fire. My buddy is a fire captain for I think Visalia. I think it's Visalia Fire. He fucked up his back on duty on a call. He immediately had surgery within the next few months. Was out for 6, came back to work. Back went out again. He's like, fuck, I have to have another surgery. Doc says I have to do this. They said, okay, go get it done. Within a year and a half, he had 2 surgeries and was back at work. You don't see that in law enforcement.
Well, so I was going to say this. You do see it. You do see this in the veteran community and in the firefighting community. What I think changes is the agency and the way, like the leadership, because that's where it all stems from, right? Good leaders say, give me my good people, heal them up. So shout out to the firefighters and the veterans who know the VA and the work comp system are just the same for them as they are for the cops, because we all are, that same bullshit is for you guys as for us. So I don't want anybody to think that we are just going, oh, poor police officers, we're so no. The big green weenie, the big blue weenie, and the big red weenie, right? Just pick your weenie.
The fucking red rocket.
Right, the red rocket, the blue bomber, and the green weenie. They're all the same, right? I always say that she's like, I got your back. And I say, yeah, no, I know, Chief, I can feel you there. Right behind
Just
you.
spit on it this time. Please.
One thing I tell people want to be cops is that police age in dog years. And people don't understand that. Right. And then, if you look at the sports programs for cops, if you have 20 years on the job, you are in the senior class of sports for police department. And you're thinking a 42, 45-year-old is in that's the oldest class you can be in for sports. But why at 40 something years old, you're in the senior class? Because cops age so quickly.
Cops age like hockey players.
Yeah. It also depends on how much of that was patrol.
And both have to pretend they're not hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you don't work the front desk or something.
Oh God.
Right,
and then that's the thing. You don't want to be the house mouse.
No.
You don't want to sit there taking desk reports, counter reports. No, sir. I'll just as soon stay home and play Xbox.
That's when the selfishness comes out, because you're like, I don't want to be ostracized anymore. I don't want to fucking be, the house mouse bitch doing all the fucking, reports at whatever comes through the front. You work at a large agency, you're getting a lot. You're getting like 10 fucking reports a day, maybe 5, depending on if you can brush them off or dispo them or whatever. But some days are really busy and you don't want to do that. So you're like, fuck it, I'll duct tape this bitch back together. And that's where the selfishness comes out. That's where you're like, I'm going to bubblegum this shit back together because I don't want to do this shit. I would rather be out in the field. I'd rather do this. And it's not safe. And it's not safe for you, your partner, or the civilians that you're protecting. And you have to recognize that. And I think it's taken me a long time to recognize that, it's a maturity thing, I think. But the selfishness will always be there, because you don't want to do that. You don't want to be stuck inside and micromanaged and all this shit. You want to be free in your car. And then if you work patrol for fucking longer than 5 years, a lot of agencies, big agencies, cops will do like 5 years and they're gone somewhere else doing specialized units, whatever, and they get a fucking break. And those are the dudes you see, they're like fucking 40 and they look young as shit. And they're like, oh, I'm spry, I'm fucking doing this and that. And then you see the dude who's been on patrol for 10 years straight. And you're like, whoa, that's a difference. You're the same age. What happened?
Well, so then you have feelings of abandonment after injuries, which I thought was incredible that they put this on the list, because that's a huge thing where you're like, well, that guy's fucking hurt. Bye. Yeah. Right. They not only do you feel abandoned, but you actively feel persecuted. Right. Because if you're squaring down the barrel or staring down the barrel of possible retirement, nobody wants to touch you. You are contaminated. You are a freaking rotten potato that can do nothing but give AIDS to other potatoes, right? As far as they are concerned. And then if you're legitimately injured and just trying to rehab to get back to work, they're like, go tell the doctor you're fine and get back to work.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you got city doctors. You can go to your own doctor or whoever, and they go, yeah, this person is 99% disabled. And if you go to the city doctor, they go, yeah, they're fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Go back to
Dude.
work.
You know what's
Yep.
funny is I think I told Tom this, but Ken, when I had my my last knee surgery, which was a big, massive one, I was sitting there, and I think I had just gotten out of surgery that night, or is the next day. And I was sitting there, and I got my phone rang, and I was all fucking doped up, right? And that's when the mouth muzzle, that thing comes right the fuck off, right? You don't give a fuck what you're about to say. And it was the watch commander from where I work, and was like, "Hey man, you've been out IOD for a while." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So like, when are you coming back to work?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Yeah, you've been out for a long time. When are you coming back?" And I was like, I started laughing at him, and I was like, "Listen, man," I was like, "I just had fucking surgery today. I'm not coming back for a while. This is my second surgery. This is a massive surgery. I'm not coming back for a while." He's like, "Well, how long?" I said, "Well, recovery is 18 fucking months.
Mm-hmm.
That's recovery. I don't know what, like, that's what the doctor told me. So I'm not coming back anytime soon, but, and I don't know what to tell you." He's like, "I didn't even know you were out injured." And I was like, "Well, maybe you should look at that before you call me. Maybe that's a good idea." And I was like, "Fuck, this is a watch commander." And my brain's like, "Shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up," the whole time. But I'm like, how bad are you? How bad at your job are you? Sorry, how bad at your job are you for you not to even look up or talk to anyone, or maybe reach out to anybody and see, hey, this officer's out, but why is he out? And then maybe like, "Hey, how you doing, man? You feeling better? You just had surgery. Oh, you had another one? Okay, cool." That would be a better way to start a conversation than, "Hey, when are you coming back to work?" And then the moment I told him, I was like, "I just had surgery," that's when gears shifted, tone changed in his voice. He instantly got that, "Well, I'm a supervisor," and became a dick right off of the bat. And I was like, "Damn, dude, like, this is how you treat your employees?"
Right.
I've never met the man. I don't fucking know him. He was new. And I get it. You're new, but hey, man, if you're new at your job or you're new at the area that you're working, maybe get to know the employees and get to know the ones that are out and get to know the reason why that they're out before you call them and ask them when they're coming back. Cause it's kind of insulting when they're doing their job, trying to protect and help out the city they work in, and they got injured doing it. And now they have had they're on their second fucking surgery. Yeah. It's just, it's sorry. I'm getting off my soapbox for a second, but God dang, dude, it's just that lack of fucking support. It's just, I don't know. And I'm always been allergic to stupidity.
Chuck's getting some stuff out right now. It's
I'm
all
angry.
right.
Yeah.
But, and I got to tell you, and I'm going to, this one dude right here, if you look in the comments, Shagadelic Punk, this man right here.
Yeah.
This man right here. That man is probably the most solid dude I know. And he never let me just sit by the wayside. He always called me and talked to me and made sure I was okay.
Which is that's a partner right there.
Tom, I don't know how other agencies handle it, but LAPD, and Chuck knows this, out of medical liaison, if you're IOD, they have a unit out of medical liaison. Their sole purpose is to run surveillance on IOD officers to see if they're gaming the system.
Other people don't have those units, but I would imagine an agency with 10,000 coppers. And hey, I'm going to tell you right now, I've seen 8,200 right now, probably maybe less. This guy retired and took a big payout, bigger than I got, right? And then they did some checking and they determined that he maybe wasn't as disabled as he thought he was or said he was. And he got a big fat bill saying, you're lucky we're not prosecuting you. Thou shalt pay back this much. And they're not fucking around at some of these big agencies because they have been through the ringer. They, for every one person gold bricking that they catch,
right?
How many other ones don't they catch, right?
But
which is unfortunate for the people that actually need the help, which is why the only people that hate bad cops more than the public is good cops, right? That's weird. If you're a gold bricker, the problem is
we're not
we're trained to now think everyone's a gold bricker.
Right. And we're not talking about the cop who's spending time with his family, going and doing things. He's off work, but he's not dead, right? He's injured, but he's not fucking dead, and he needs to get out and do things, right? We're not talking about the dude who's out there with his family and trying to do things. We're talking about the motherfucker who says he's out with a back injury or like that's the most common one. I'm just going to pick on backs, even though my back's fucked up. And it's a back injury, and this dude's out there snowboarding, and he's out there skydiving, and he's doing dumb shit and stuff like that, and then posting it. That's the people that we're talking about. The clear public abuser who's doesn't give a fuck. He's like, oh, I got my shit. I'm going to go out and do this.
Right.
We're talking about those people. We're not talking about the one who's just like, yeah, I'm just trying to like take my family out to the beach or, and you just sit with them and, take them out in the trailer or the RV or whatever the fuck, go camping,
Right.
glamping, I should say, glamping, and going on mini vacations and things like that because you're trying to do things with your family. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the people who are clearly abusing the system.
Yeah. So now we've also got lack of financial compensation, lack of support from superiors, which I think we've covered pretty well in our last segment. But forced medical retirement. I could tell you straight up that I would not have retired when I did if I had the choice. You know who did have the choice, though, was my agency, because they could have handled the situation in a much more positive way that would have started the process sooner, enabling me to get back sooner, and not creating a situation where, regardless of whether or not I got well, I would never have been able to go back to work for them, which is ultimately what ended up happening. Is my relationship with the police department became so adversarial that the only options were go back and be a pariah, which couldn't happen.
Right.
And it couldn't happen it would have taken more time than they were willing to give, right? They were at a point where they're like, we want a decision. Well, and you could extend me. No. Make your decision, make your choice. Well, that's not much of a choice, right? So when they talk about being forced to medically retire, once the agency sees that that's an option and they don't have to extend you, a good agency would be like, oh, we value you, we're going to extend you. But most agencies, all right, GTFO, because
the
less time we have to have you on the books, the better.
There should be a caveat, a little subsection to forced medical retirement. It should be there. It should be right underneath it. It should say, dicking around those who have to medically retire, and their doctors are like, we're not releasing you. And then the city is like, or the workers' comp is like, no, we're going to fuck with you even more. And we're going to fuck with you longer because they want you to quit because they don't want to pay out.
So that was here's one of the weirdest things, right? The department had to keep paying me until my retirement kicked in, right? The amount of time, if the department, I could honestly tell you, if my department had handled the situation properly from the jump, by the time I collected my first actual retirement check, it was within the window of when my doctor was saying I probably could have returned to work. So instead, they medically retire you, but that sets an entirely different clock that they're going to still have to pay you. Now, they'll get reimbursed by the retirement system, and then ultimately I'll start collecting my retirement. But that still took almost a year or more than a year, right? And so I was at like 2.5 years. Well, that was in that window that my doctor was saying, yeah, you probably would be good to go. But they didn't handle it right. Treatments and whatnot, So,
oh, good.
No, I was just saying. So when they say forced, you can say, "Well, you had a choice." No, there is no real choice.
And in California, I don't know. I'm not sure about now, but it used to be where you had a year of IOD time, and then after you spent that IOD time, you went on state rate for workers' comp. And who can afford that?
No one.
Well,
fucking no one, dude.
Right.
Fucking absolutely no one.
Yeah.
Right.
So they kind of
they do it like they don't care.
You know what? and it goes back to those who can't afford it. It goes back to where is it family or financial troubles, because then they start having to use credit, and then they max out their credit, and then they're fucked.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, a lack of sense of self after retirement. Oh boy.
You guys can speak of that, right? Like, because you guys are both retired, and so like the lack of sense of self, like I'm sure at one point it hit both of you, but what did you do to combat it?
We did podcasts.
All right.
I mean, I'm being cheeky, but to a certain extent, this kept me connected, and I'm sure Ken feels the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. When I retired, it was a long time coming, but I was like, yeah, that was good. That was a good time. I had a good time in the department. I didn't. My life wasn't the department, and I didn't hang out with cops all the time. Like, that's my thing, man. And
There you go.
so when I retired, I didn't even think about the job. I retired, and then I stayed at home. I thought I was going to sleep in for the rest of my life, and then after 3 years, I got bored.
It's amazing
why I
how
went-
quickly that happens.
Yeah, and I went back after 3 years to work at Backgrounds. But other than that, I guess I'm baffled sometimes at that particular one, because to be so wrapped up, like you were talking, Tom, about the Centurions or the new Centurions.
Yeah.
And the guy he's sitting at his table, and he's an old copper, and he spent his whole life being a cop, and that's who he was.
George C. Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he blows his brains out because he has no life.
Right. And what the scene before it, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie. You might be hard pressed to find. Tubi or one of the weirder channels might have it, but it's an older movie. It's a great book by Joseph Wambaugh, who was an LAPD copper. But in the scene right before he smokes himself and he eats his gun, he's at the station in the middle of the day, wandering around the station house, trying to get anybody to talk to him. And they're all going, "Hey, good to see you. Oh, yeah, our shift's just, I'm doing follow-up. Hey, oh, it's always, yeah, we should go get it. We should get to, I'm totally going to come by. Oh, yeah, da. And they just keep going. And it happens so quickly, and he just ends up standing there by himself in the station where he used to feel at home. And now he feels nothing but loneliness, right? And so that's literally the scene right after that. He goes home and eats his gun. And that's
very realistic.
Yeah. Ken, did you ever get or hear of, because I know it made the rounds at LAPD just from the guy who told it to me, is an old school LAPD guy, probably came on a little bit before you, the Condo and Redondo speech?
I do not recall that.
So it was a man by the name of Greg Dawsey, and Greg ran the arrest and control unit at LAPD for a long time, and then became a police academy coordinator at the academy I went to. He worked the job at the same time as my dad. My dad knew him. Dawsey would give the young recruits from at some point, it probably started when he was an FTO. He would give the Condo and Redondo speech, and it became pretty well known. And it was, have your eyes set on something after retirement. Don't be just the job, right? Have your plan for when this job is over, and don't surround yourself with nothing but cops. Have friends who knew you before you were a cop. Keep those friends. Don't isolate. It is hard, but you know what? I have Matt. I have Marco. I have Matt. I have Marco. I was able to keep, like, we there were times where we weren't necessarily talking for, but we tried to at least keep that some semblance of a relationship and that brotherhood, and keeping those people, whether it's somebody you served in the military with. And Matt, like I said, Matt went to prison and I went to the police academy. We couldn't see each other for a long time because he was on parole and I couldn't associate with him. There's all these different things that can keep you apart from somebody, but you can still keep tabs on your brothers. The guys from Easy Company, Band of Brothers, if those of you have seen the documentary, when they found out one of their fellow members of Easy Company was homeless and alcoholic, they flew to where he was at, drag him off the street, showered him, moved him, gave him food, gave him money. They rehabbed him out of alcoholism into a job and into a successful life post World War II. That's how we're supposed to look after each other, right?
Yeah.
Check on your buddies that are home IOD. Remember, they miss you. Like they haven't forgotten about you. So I just thought that was really real, because I lost friends. I had people straight up text me and say, "You're faking this whole thing just to get a pension." And these are people that, like,
fuck, dude,
they were my friends to the point where one of them I introduced to his wife, right? I was like, "Hey, check this out. This lady's my doctor. She's pretty cool. She's single now. You're pretty cool." And he tried to tell me later, "Oh, you were never a good friend to me, and you're faking this all for a retirement." And it was at the time, it was so devastating, because I had thought of this guy as a brother.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing I can do 10 years later but go, his fucking loss, right? But that part of that happens to way more people, firefighters, veterans. They separate. All the guys in the unit are still in the unit. Boom. Whether it's for medical reasons or whether it's just their time, check on your buddies.
Yeah, part of what you said was important about not becoming the job. One of the things about men is, this is what I heard, is that men's identities are tied up in their jobs. But with cops, you cannot become the job. Cannot become you. If you have to know ahead of time before you even get on the job, you will not be a cop at some point.
Right.
You either retire, force medical, you could get dead. There's all kinds of things that can happen, but at some point you're not going to be a cop. So when that happens, you know what's going to happen. You need to have a plan.
Yeah.
Ahead of time.
Know what your condo in Redondo is.
Yeah.
And I think that when going through the academy, I think there's a lot of misinformation that's being fed to the recruits, because they say this, and this was told to me: this is not a job, this is a lifestyle. And I'm like, I get it, like, whatever, I get that. But I always try to not be a cop 24/7. When I'm off, I'm off, and I was always trying to find friends outside of this, because, it was tough. And then I'm not going to get into my story, but a lot of things happened, whatever. Anyways, but that was just what was being told to us in the academy. Like, this isn't just a job. This is a lifestyle. You are a cop, not 12 hours a day, but 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah,
and
carry
that's
your
what was
gun
being
and your
told to
badge
us.
everywhere, because if you have to do something, you're going to have to do something. You're not just a cop
like,
on duty, or you can put yourself on duty and blah, blah. Yeah. And
I've seen people,
we buy into it. We are superheroes.
Yeah. There's dudes who go off duty and then they take their radio and they listen to it all the way home, because if something pops off, they're gonna go respond. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Was never me.
Off, dude. Turn that shit off, dude.
Yeah,
dude, we had a guy go in fucking pursuit of a car, broadcasting over his radio, cutting off black and whites, because he's primary. Like, this dude bought into that shit so hard. And I'm like, oh, this is fucking wrong. Oh my God, this is bad. Like, the dude is in pursuit in a Challenger, chasing a G ride or some crazy shit.
Well, Ken,
what the fuck?
As we're closing out, I got a little surprise for you.
Yes.
1982, the MX 350.
That looks familiar.
Oh, wow.
Does it look familiar to you?
Yeah.
That brick. Oh man.
Yeah.
That's
were big radios, man.
1982, the Motorola MX 350. For those of you who've seen Ghostbusters, you know what this looks like. It is a giant brick of a radio, which is a good stand-in for an impact weapon whenever you need it to be. Just for the record.
That's funny, man.
Old school police.
Dude, I've seen that thing in person. It's legit, like,
dude, it's
like
14
tall.
inches tall minus the antenna.
Yeah.
Then you add the antennas another like 10 inches.
Dude, in 1980, I went on a ride along out of the academy to Hollenbeck Division, and they didn't have radios at all. But there was the unit that I was riding with, the P3s. They had a handheld radio, and you remember the old the old war movies with the walkie-talkie where the guy had
Yeah.
it was like this
Yeah.
big, the big green
the
thing.
handle.
It was one of those, man.
Mhm.
It was
Shut up.
such a
No
big
way, dude.
radio. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Wow.
I appreciate you coming on, Ken. We have to have you back because I have questions about backgrounds that I want to get answered. Like,
I have answers.
We should
what's
do an update segment
the-
of backgrounds, new age backgrounds.
and recruiting, because
New age.
obviously all that stuff has changed. But
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
know, like in the spirit of my friend's wife getting her psych overturned, I want to know some of the things that you've seen overturned. Just
I have to
over
think
the
about
years,
that.
whether it's you or not, whether you're like, yeah, don't hire this guy, and they're like, no, we're gonna go ahead. And you're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Are you sure about that?
I mean, I feel like you're sure, but you don't look sure.
Right.
Oh, and I will tell you, I'll check around. You let me know ahead of time. I know I could talk to people and they go, give me some stories, and they'll tell me some stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. We want to
Okay.
hear some of the, or some of the stuff where you DQ'd them and they're like, really, that you did what?
Yeah.
Because I have a story about a guy standing up. They did the background questionnaire interview where they were like, okay, gather us all in the same room and hand out the background packet all at the same time, and the captain gave us the "you better be honest" speech, because you can get fired for lying, and so we won't even hire you if we found that you've lied about one thing, right?
Mhm.
Gave us that whole speech. The guy stands up and goes, so what if it wasn't illegal in the country you were in when you did it?
Doesn't work for me.
And the captain was like, I'm sorry, your name was?
Yeah.
Don't come
So
back.
yeah. So I want to have you back to talk about that. Also, you've been on a podcast that I just did an episode of called Things Police See.
Yes,
podcast.
Steve Gould, good friend.
Steve's a good dude. I
Yeah,
like Steve.
We worked backgrounds together back in the day.
Oh, did you
Oh,
at
wow.
the same agency?
Yeah. For
Oh, okay.
LAPD backgrounds. That's where we
Yeah.
met.
I know he's back east now, but
Yeah,
right?
he decided he was going to go to his roots in Massachusetts and be a cop there. And we were doing the podcast. I think we did podcast after he went back there.
Mhm.
And yeah, we had some good times, but that is a good podcast.
well, I hope so. I've just finished it, so
Yeah, because
now
you're on it now. It's a good podcast.
yeah. So I watch for me, and then Chuck's gonna be on there, and then we're
Chuck?
gonna
I'm going on Saturday.
Yeah.
Morning.
That's cool.
and they don't air the same day that you record them, so
No.
you'll have to look at their schedule coming up, but the Steve over at the Things Police See podcast will have myself and Chuck on, and then he will be coming on with us. We've asked him to come on and share some stories on war stories, and let me tell you,
Should be next week.
there is no other podcast that dovetails as quite nicely into what we do as to what he does.
Mhm.
But I will say this, that he also wants to come on the locker room, because he didn't know about our midweek show where we get into shenanigans and current events. So I think if we're going to do 2 episodes of his show, he's going to have to do 2 episodes of our
There
show.
you go.
And we'll have to put him on War Stories, and then we'll have him jump in on the locker room. So
Yeah.
look forward to that, because that should be
Yep.
coming pretty quick. And other than that, Chuck, what do we got to kind of take us out?
Well, hey everyone, thanks for listening. Please follow us, like and share, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit the like and bell notification so you'll be notified every time we go live. Things like that. Share stuff on all the, like, what is it, YouTube? Please like and share there so they help that. So I've had a couple
What
beers.
is that?
You might want to
help
practice
that stuff. Anyways, I sound like Joe Biden right now. Hey, but please, thank you. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Our Instagram is at war_stories_official, and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. Please like and share all of that. Click the link in the bio. You can get all of our socials, our media. You can go to their YouTube channel, our website, which is www.warstoriesofficial.com. You can grab some merch there. And then you can also get the mailbag or the booking email The booking email is where you go if you want to be featured on the show, and if you think you have a story you want to share, warstories@gmail.com. We're always looking for veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, medics, but also corrections, dispatchers, and nurses. Thank you for the support. Stay safe.
Yep. So I think that about does it. Ken, thank you for coming on. And remember to do all the stuff Chuck said on the social medias. Until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.